Good morning. Welcome back to our third day of the Women's Leadership Conference, Week of Women. I'm Jennifer Tappy. I'm the Human Resources Manager for Green Country Behavioral Health Services, and I'll be today's presenter. We are very excited about today's speaker, but first I would like to thank our sponsors. Presenting sponsor is Muskogee Creek Nation Casino. Host sponsor is Indian Capital Technology Center. Speaker sponsor is OG&E, First Star Bank, Green Country Behavioral Health Services, St. Francis Hospital, Muskogee, Armstrong Bank, Arvis Bank, Georgia Pacific, Muskogee Phoenix, Northeastern State University, Refresco, Connors State College, and Love Bottling. We also would like to make an announcement that Zoom will look a little bit different today because our speaker will be doing some breakout rooms, so be mindful of that. If there are any questions for our speaker today, please put them in the Q&A box and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. Today's speaker is presented to you by OG&E. Kristi Spaethe is the Chief Executive Officer for the People's Perspective and People Perspective Search and Recruiting, designed to be the one-stop shop for all things people in the communities that these organizations serve. With almost 20 years experience in all things HR, Kristi has worked with organizations such as Quick Trip, Solvay, Nordum, WPX Energy, Pinot's Palette, Andolini's, and various chamber and nonprofit organizations across the region. Kristi earns a bachelor's degree in psychology with the Human Resources Development option and also holds the PHR and SHRM CP certifications. Kristi is the current OKHR State Director for Oklahoma Human Resources State Council, where she has served in previous roles beginning since 2018. Kristi has also served in various roles with the Tulsa Area Human Resources Association, including president since 2014. Additionally, Kristi currently serves on the Broken Arrow Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors and has served on the Bixby Metro Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. Kristi also gives back to the community by giving her time to nonprofit organizations such as Women in Recovery, Muddy Paws, and Lindsay House. So without further ado, please.
I promise I know how to work Zoom, or I at least know how to talk about imposter syndrome. How embarrassing that I didn't unmute myself. Okay, so hi, everybody. Well done, Jennifer. That was a great introduction. And if anybody has ever listened to their bio being read, then you know that's a great moment of imposter syndrome. Not making that up. That always feels a little awkward to me. So I'm Kristi Spaethe. Like Jennifer said, you heard enough about me. I'm super pumped to be here with you all today. I talked at the Muskogee Women's Leadership Conference, I think in 2019, I think. Who knows? It was before COVID, right? I guess we'll start saying BC again before COVID. It's all a little bit of a blur, but that was one of the first times that I spoke to a group of women, definitely that many women, and for sure, some imposter syndrome happened when I spoke to you all back in 2019. I talked to Jenny yesterday, so I was in Muskogee yesterday, and I'm talking to Muskogee women today. That's really exciting. But I was talking to Jenny yesterday about that event, and when I talked to you last about executive presence. And we talked about the starfish pose. I'm sitting so you can't quite see it. And if I have any Ted Lasso friends that are joining me, then you know that Rebecca makes herself big, right? And I did that. Before I talked, where I guess we might have been at ICTC. I went into the bathroom stall. It was almost my turn to go on and talk, and I was really nervous. And all by myself in the bathroom stall, I made myself big. And that helps. So if you've never tried that, feel like a dork, but it really works. So we are here to talk about imposter syndrome today. I would love to know how many of you have heard that phrase before now, before you saw that I was talking about it. So put that in the chat. Angela and Paige are going to keep me posted on what's happening in the chat. So please put that in the chat if you've ever heard that term before. We will have a great opportunity to talk about your individual experiences with imposter syndrome towards the end of the session. I would love to see some of your faces because this is a different format. So if you're in a place where you can turn your video on, that would be amazing. Thank you. Thank you. I see your face. So thank you so much for doing that. And when we go into the breakout rooms, it will be beneficial if you can have your video on, just so that you can talk with the other women and see who you're talking to. So let's get started. Let's talk about imposter syndrome. I think that I know this is probably my favorite talk that I'm doing right now. This is a part of what I do for a living. And the reason why I love to talk about it is because it resonates with almost everybody that I talk to about it. I have experienced imposter syndrome before I knew what that phrase meant. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey before we define it. So I experienced imposter syndrome probably the first time that I can recall experiencing it is when I went to college. So I was a non-traditional student. I went to college later in life. And I think I had so much imposter syndrome around that because I had tried it before and it didn't work. So there were lots of moments of they're going to figure me out. I don't belong here. They know I don't belong here. So that was probably the first moment that I can coin experiencing imposter syndrome, even though I didn't know what it was called then. My first, what I call big girl job was with Quick Trip in the corporate office. And that was a lot of imposter syndrome. At least then when I joined the Quick Trip family, Quick Trip was the place to work in Tulsa. All the cool kids worked at Quick Trip and everybody wanted to get in, and I did somehow. And I thought for sure they were going to figure out that I was not competent enough. I didn't fit their culture. I didn't belong. And I probably went through the first 2 or 3 years of my career with Quick Trip feeling that way. I am also, my husband calls me a serial volunteer. So I volunteer lots of free jobs that I do. And so that started in 2013, 2014. I had a great CEO that said, you need to find your network. And so I found the Tulsa Area Human Resources Association and experienced imposter syndrome again. I don't know if you all have ever experienced this, but I wanted to be a part of that. So maybe that middle school feeling, if you can remember back to middle school, I wanted to be in the middle of that organization. And I was so excited to be able to do that. And when they finally did put me on a volunteer committee and eventually the board, here comes imposter syndrome again. Ooh, they're going to figure out that I don't have anything to contribute. I'm brand new to this HR department of one role. I'm not going to be successful. Why am I here? That was another moment of imposter syndrome. I think that the most recent career related example of imposter syndrome is when I started my business in 2018. So if any of you have ever started a business, you know that, well, most of you know that it's pretty challenging. And I, especially at that point in my life, I knew how to do HR. I was a career HR professional, still am, knew how to do HR, but I had no idea how to run a business, how to start and run a business. So I was winging it, and I felt confident that everybody knew that I was winging it. And I also felt confident that no one was going to pay me money to do that, to help them. And when they started paying me money, I thought, oh my gosh, this is so much money that they're paying me. Surely they're going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing and they're going to take their money back. So that has been a large part of that journey. I talked to a gentleman this morning that I've coached in the past, and he's going out on his own and starting a new business. And he said, I'm nervous and excited, which, by the way, my daughter calls nerve excited, if you want to use that phrase. I think it's brilliant. So he's nerve excited, but he said, really, I'm worried about people understanding that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm worried about them figuring out that I don't know what I'm doing. And aren't we all? So if we're going to be honest, which I hope you will, I hope you'll be vulnerable with me for the next 45 minutes. We'll figure out that we probably have all experienced this. last story, because this is so interesting. I gave this talk in May to through a bank in Tulsa. They invited me to speak, and there were some really, really successful women in the room, as there are today. The difference is I got to watch all of them walk in. So I got there early for my talk and got to watch all of these really successful women walk into this room. And most of them were so put together. So these are the women that their handbag matches their shoes, and their jewelry is gorgeous, and their makeup is just so, and they're working the room, and they're lovely. And I was sitting there getting ready to talk about imposter syndrome, thinking, oh no, I don't know if I belong here. And these women, I don't know that they have anything to learn from me. Look how gorgeous they are and put together, and they're working this room. And I was experiencing imposter syndrome right before I talked to them about imposter syndrome. So if you're thinking right now, uh-oh, she's going to talk to us about imposter syndrome and she still has it, uh, it's true. And if you want to hop off, cool, that's okay. You've already paid for it, so you're probably going to stay anyway. But I think that I hope that we can all be that vulnerable. We can learn from each other today. And while I have not mastered this, I probably won't have full mastery of this in my lifetime. I have some tips and tricks that we can talk through today. So I'm going to check in on the chat. Angela and Paige, how many of us have heard of imposter syndrome? Do we have anybody in the chat chime in about that?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, chime in. You all put in the chat if you've heard of imposter syndrome before, and let me know, and we'll keep going. So, what is it? Let's define it before we start talking about why it happens and what we do about it. So, imposter syndrome, my favorite definition is intellectual self-doubt. It's doubt within us, not necessarily externally. This is internally. It's more common when we're embarking on a new endeavor, and it's more common among minorities. So, yes, that's us as women. It's also minorities, could be race, could be sexual orientation, anyone that is not well represented in the world of work, or it's our perception is not well represented in the world of work. Studies find that imposter syndrome is more common there. This definition started in the 1970s. You can see on your screen, it was coined by some really, really smart people that termed it first imposter phenomenon, and it's turned into imposter syndrome. That's probably what most of us have heard of. And I love my little pie chart there. I love a good pie chart. But here's what the pie chart says. We've all experienced it. So as women, if we're going to be honest, at some point in our lives, our personal lives, our careers, we have probably experienced imposter syndrome, and we're going to talk about that today. I think it's interesting that Harvard Business Review, they've really got their stuff together, right? They're really smart. They put an article out that said, I think the title of it was, "Stop Telling Women That They Have Imposter Syndrome." So I came across that article when I was preparing this slide deck, this presentation, and I thought, uh-oh, maybe I'm not supposed to do this talk. But here was the premise behind that article. When society tells women that they have imposter syndrome, they are saying that it perpetuates it. What Harvard Business Review wants our organizations to do and our society to do is to address the lack of what we just talked about, us being able to see ourselves in the room. That's what they want. They want our organizations to make sure that there is equity, make sure that we are giving opportunities to minorities and women, just like we're giving to men. So that's really what Harvard Business Review is saying. Imposter syndrome exists. So whether we stop telling women that they have it or we don't, they're still going to have it. And so I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it so that you can at least have awareness around it the next time you experience imposter syndrome. And maybe you'll have a few tools in your toolbox to be able to address it. Any questions or thoughts on that slide? You're all very quiet. That's the wrong way. Here we go. Let's talk about, I love the title of this slide. I'm not sure why, I'm kind of a nerd. The lady statistics. So let's talk about the lady statistics. These are statistics that we gathered when through studies where we've surveyed women. So only women answered these questions that give us these statistics. So the first one says that 75% of women polled say that they have experienced imposter syndrome. I don't know who those other 25% are. I don't know if maybe they didn't understand it or if they didn't feel comfortable being honest, but I've already told you, I really think we have all experienced it in some way. 85% believe imposter syndrome is commonly experienced, so we've ticked up a little bit. These are the ones that I really want to talk about, these next two, and I want you to start putting your thoughts in the chat. So somebody please humor me and use the chat. 74% of women believe their male counterparts do not experience imposter syndrome as much as female leaders do. 81% of women believe they put more pressure on themselves not to fail than men do. So I want you to put in the chat why you think that is. Why do we think that men don't experience imposter syndrome like we do, and that men don't put as much pressure on themselves to not fail as we do? I would like to say real quick, this is not a men bashing session. I've maybe had a few turn into that. Married to a man, really like him, but there's lots of value there. But there are fundamental differences between how women show up to work and how men show up to work. And I'd love to know your thoughts behind that. I'm going to keep going with my statistics and then we'll come back to that. So please do put those comments in the chat and then we'll, Angela and I'll ask Angela and Paige to read those to us. 47% of women say their feelings of self-doubt result from never having expected to reach this level of achievement. I think that's really interesting. So I never thought I would get here. Now I'm here and I'm not sure I know what I'm doing. Or they might know. They might think I don't know what I'm doing. 56% have been afraid they won't live up to expectations or that people around them will not believe they are capable as they expected. We'll talk about this, kind of using that, comparing ourselves to others. I think it's my friend Brene Brown that says comparison is the thief of joy. It never usually goes well, but gosh, don't we all do it? 32% identified with imposter syndrome because they did not know others in similar place, personally or professionally. So that means we don't see ourselves in the room. Okay, so I'm going to go back to those two statistics that talk about how we are different than men when it comes to imposter syndrome. Paige, Angela, do we have anybody that has dropped their thoughts in the chat?
Yes. One says they think women just admit it more. Creek Nation Casino team says they think those stats are part of women's imposter syndrome and men are under just as much stress and pressure as we are. They may just mask it better. I think men feel they're more deserving of or entitled to leadership roles than women do. It's more connected to women because we are afraid to express their emotions and how they feel. And how they feel, where men not so much.
I think, thank you all so much for doing that. There are going to be a couple more places where I ask you to do that. That is great stuff. I love that kind of that theme. This is what I heard, that men just really aren't ready to admit yet that they feel just as much stress and pressure. I think that women do have whatever the nature versus nurture reason is. I think that women are in roles, typically what's expected of us. And I talked about this with executive presence. Women are expected to take kind of that nurturing role, to be more vulnerable, it's okay for us to tie emotion in to some of these explanations. And it's not the case for men. I heard someone say once, men have been in the race longer than us. So if you think about the world of work, men have been working longer than us. They've been in the workforce longer than we have. So there is some truth to the fact that they are ahead of us, if that makes sense to you. So they are moving into leadership positions more than we are because there are still more of them in the workforce and they've been doing this longer. Does that make it right or wrong? No, but it is, right? It is what it is. I think there's another interesting statistic that I've heard before, and this relates a little bit to my world of work, that men will apply for a job if they meet something like 50% of the criteria. So if a man looks at a job description or a job posting and he meets 50% of what they're asking for, he'll go ahead and apply for the job. For women, it's something like 80 or 90%. So there are just differences. And again, not right or wrong, but it does play into this, the point of this, that whether we admit it or not, women are experiencing imposter syndrome probably more often than men. So let's talk about, we've talked a little bit about the why. Let's keep going. So I mentioned not being able to identify with others. So my first department of one job, that means I did all things HR, everything that they could tack on to me. They did. Some of it made sense, some of it did not. But I did it anyway because I was really excited. I got to be on the leadership team. That was the first leadership team that I had ever been on. This was a manufacturing company. And I was pumped. I was the only woman in the room. And I've continued throughout my corporate career to typically be the only woman in the room. I remember one of my first, we had a little bit of a retreat. So a day-long retreat where we went to, it was their hunting cabin. Talk about feeling out of place because I don't hunt. But that's where we went. We went to their hunting cabin and we were getting ready for the day, putting breakfast together, and I was asked to make coffee. So out of 8 of us, they singled me out to make the coffee. And at that point, I didn't drink coffee and I didn't know how to make coffee. This was not a Keurig. That's how long ago it was. This was a pot with the coffee grounds and all of that. So that's a very clear memory of me kind of stepping back. Some of that enthusiasm had waned for me being a part of this leadership team. It was the first moment of, oh, I'm not sure if I belong here, or I'm not sure if they think I belong here. So imposter syndrome can really sneak in when we don't feel like we fit, when we don't feel like we belong. And it's hard to feel those things when we can't see ourselves in some way represented in the room, whatever that means. It happens because of intellectual self-doubt. That is just us, right? Not being sure if we know what we're talking about. There's that whole phrase of fake it till you make it. And sometimes I love that and sometimes I hate it. But faking it, there's still doubt there, right? So I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm not sure if this is the right thing. That's absolutely a way that imposter syndrome can sneak in. Comparing ourselves to others. So that's what I was doing as I watched all of those beautiful women come into that room in May, right? I was looking at them and I was thinking, man, they look put together. Gosh, they've really got their stuff together. Look how they're working this room. They're so friendly and outgoing. I wasn't praising them or applauding them. I was comparing that to me, to the fact that I have kind of a uniform, right? I have blazers, I have pants, and I have camisoles, and that's about it. This is as much makeup as you'll ever see me with. So I was comparing myself to them. And what that does is minimize the value that I bring, right? We're all unique, and we all bring unique, valuable things to the table. But when I'm comparing myself to someone else, it doesn't let me shine, and it puts me into that place of imposter syndrome. Our workplaces. So I talked about that with the Harvard Business Review article. So our workplaces, can perpetuate imposter syndrome. Not all. There's great work being done, but some of our workplaces are still heavy on promoting only men, promoting people that aren't diverse, that don't fit the definition of minority. And when that happens, it perpetuates us not being able to see ourselves in the room. And then sometimes we have imposter syndrome because we have no idea what we're doing. So I told you when I started a business, I had no idea what I was doing. Have I figured it out? Mostly, some days more than others, but I love this phrase. Any of you that are former teachers or love grammar, you're not going to love it. But I heard it on a podcast. I'm a figure outer. So I believe that I'm a figure outer because I've done that my whole life. When I'm faced against anything, I will figure it out. So even if I don't know what I'm doing, I will figure it out. And that's how I start to overcome that imposter syndrome hurdle, by knowing that I am going to figure it out. And dadgummit, I'm going to be successful, because that's what I have in me. And it's taken me a long time to realize that, to appreciate it, to accept it. Any thoughts, comments on that slide? Because we're getting ready to talk about it. That's my favorite slide of the whole presentation because I'm a nerd. Any thoughts on what we just covered? Okay, then we will talk about it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can get everything ready for our breakout rooms. We are going to have 12 of those. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put you into a breakout room with people that you may or may not know. And we have plenty of time for you to have great discussions. That's really what I want you to have. So if you can turn your video on for this piece of it, that would be great. It can be a little bit awkward to be in a breakout room with people and not be able to see their faces. So if you can turn your video on, that will be awesome. If you can't, I respect where you are. This is what I want you to talk about. An example that you have where you've experienced imposter syndrome. So when is the time that you have experienced imposter syndrome? What did that feel like? Why do you think you experienced it? And did you overcome it? And if you did, how? Or is it one of those examples that I've shared with you from Quick Trip or volunteering where I didn't even know that's what it was called and I just muddled my way through it? So in your breakout rooms, we will have, we will have 10 minutes to talk about this. So you have plenty of time to talk amongst yourselves. A time that you've experienced imposter syndrome, why, if you have a hypothesis on why you experienced that, and then if you did anything to overcome it, what was that? So we will have 10 minutes. I'm going to give you, there we go. Are we ready? Those of you that have your video on, give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Good to see you, Melissa. Okay, here we go. So you'll get a 60-second warning when it's time for you to come back. And then I would love for some of you to be ready to unmute yourself and share with me your examples when you come back. So for those of you that need to get the courage to do that, start working on it now. Okay, off you go. We are all coming back in. We'll let everybody else join us, and then we will hopefully get some volunteers to tell us about their experience. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I hope that you had some discussion, even if it was just getting to know each other. So I'm going to ask for some brave volunteers to unmute themselves and tell this group about your experience with imposter syndrome. Do I have any takers? Because I will volunteer, and nobody likes that. All right, Gayla, you look so friendly and kind, and so I'm sorry and not sorry. Will you unmute yourself and tell us about your experience with imposter syndrome? Oh, yep. Hey, Paige and Angela, can you let people unmute themselves, particularly for now, Gayla?
There we are.
There
Okay.
we are.
I just knew you were going to call on me. Yeah, we talked about all of us kind of having imposter syndrome and how bad it is for women, especially that we're just so hard on ourselves and we compare ourselves. Facebook, social media, that does not help. We see everything that other people are posting that looks like they're just having a better life than we are. And we're just muddling through and you know, that's part of it, but really having time, experience, and coworkers that help you feel better about yourself is really what helps you to overcome a lot of that imposter syndrome. So that's kind of what we talked about in our room.
That is great. I love talking about coworkers that help you overcome that. We're going to talk about a version of that in just a minute. But yeah, I think if we go back to comparison for a minute, right? Why does it happen? We're comparing ourselves to others. Social media is such a big, it just leaves an opening for us to compare ourselves, but not realistically, right? I don't see, I have one or two Facebook friends that post the ick, right? Like when it's a hot mess. I just have one or two of those. Everybody else posts when they've got it all together, right? When they look beautiful, when they're going to an event, when their family's on vacation and they've coordinated outfits and there's a beach in the background, not right in the middle of a knockdown, drag out argument when people are slamming doors in the house. That's not when we post, right? So we're comparing ourselves to the best of what we see of everybody. That's a really good point. All those beautiful women that walked into that luncheon in May, I guarantee you every single one of them had something going on in their life that was not perfect, that was not put together, that they were struggling with. We just don't see it. Thank you, Gayla.
You're welcome.
Somebody else, one more person.
I will go.
Thank you.
So our group was really lucky in that most of us have known each other for a while. And the majority of us all admitted to experiencing imposter syndrome, primarily when we changed industries and changed jobs and had a new position and felt like we had a lot to learn.
Mhm.
It was also interesting that none of us had seen it in each other. So it wasn't something, it was something we hid at the time and we fooled everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that fake it till you make it, right? We've all learned to do that at some point. And like I said, sometimes it's good, right? And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not. But yeah, I love that. I love that none of you had seen it in each other. And I love that you found a group of people that you were able to really talk openly with. Thank you. Anybody else? I'm going to take that as a no. I won't make it super awkward. So I have shared with you my experiences. Thank you for those of you that just shared yours. And I hope that you, even if you didn't share, I hope that you had some great discussions in your breakout rooms. Let's bring it home by, this is why you're all here, right? What do we do about it? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. I don't have all the answers. These are some of the things that I think help with imposter syndrome. The first one that is not listed here that I have referenced is just the awareness that it's happening. I think that is the first step in being able to do something about it, is to recognize when you are experiencing it. So that takes some self-awareness. Let's talk about mentors. I think that mentors can get a bad rap, but I'm a big fan. Let me tell you why I'm a big fan. I moved through the first part of my career without a mentor. I didn't know necessarily that I needed that. It wasn't talked about. Nobody encouraged it. And later in my career, I have found myself surrounded by really strong mentors, and they look a lot of different ways. But I've been able to discover the value that they bring to my life, to my career, to my well-being. And so I'm a champion for mentors. And because of that, I have a lot of mentees. So I have a lot of people that I mentor in lots of different ways. So let me tell you this, mentorship does not have to be a program. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be extremely structured. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. I have mentees that I have lunch with once a month because that's what they want. That's what they need. They need to sit across from me and look at my eyeballs and tell me their things and have me give advice. I have more mentees that call me when they need me. So we either worked together in the past, or we've built relationships through one of the volunteer organizations that I've been a part of, but they call me when they need me. And I value that so much. These are strong professional people that we have great relationships. We don't talk all the time. They call me when they need me. So it can look a lot of different ways. I think that we should all have a mentor. I think that we, at a certain point in our career, we should all have somebody that we are mentoring. I don't think it's right? We pay it forward. So a lot of people have mentored me, and I pay that forward by mentoring other people. There's a term. So, well, let me tell you about another article that I read, and you'll get insight into who I am. So I read an article several years ago, and I was talking about mentoring. I was talking to people about the importance of it. I was doing keynotes on it. And I read an article that said, stop asking people to mentor you. That's how I read it in my head. There might have been an exclamation point. There might not have been, but stop it. Mentoring is dead. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it all wrong. Let me read this article to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. So I opened the article, and it says, what you need instead is a personal board of directors. And I was like, well, that sounds amazing. Let's figure out what this is. You know what it is? It's a bunch of mentors. That's what a personal board of directors is. But I love this concept. Here is what an effective personal board of directors is. Wouldn't it be great if we were surrounded by people that were our cheerleaders, right? People that said, you've got it, Kristi, you're doing amazing. You can do this. That's the right thing. I have those people. I have two of those people on my personal board of directors. And honestly, most of the time I'd rather talk to them because it feels good. But what I need is a critic. I need somebody on my personal board of directors that will say, not in a mean way, but will say, I'm not sure that you've thought that all the way through. Or did you think about this? Or I don't think that's a good idea. He hates it when I tell people this, and I'm telling 62 of my closest friends now. My husband is my critic. That doesn't work for every relationship or every marriage. So you do you, but he is someone that I know will tell me the truth. So when I need that, when I need a truth bomb, he's the one that I go to. I have a lot of people that I can go to that will tell me what they think I want to hear. But most of the time, I need somebody to tell me the truth. So surround yourself with a mix of people, people that are going to poke holes, people that are going to pump you up when you need it. Another role on a personal board of directors is an advocate. I have one of those. She's always out championing me in the community, trying to find places that I can get involved. And that's really valuable as well. But find a mentor, please. If you haven't ever tried that, look for somebody. If you're not even sure where to start, look for somebody that has stuff that you want, whether it's how they carry themselves, how they communicate, what they've done in their career, what they're doing through volunteering. Find somebody that has what you want and then ask them, or take them out to lunch or coffee and see if it might be a good fit. Something else that you can do is recognize your expertise. So this is, what are you bringing to the table? If we go back to my journey into business ownership, did I know how to own and run a business? No. Did I know how to do HR? Yes. I was so caught up in the imposter syndrome of not knowing how to own and run a business that I was minimizing what people were really hiring me to do. Did they want me to have an effective business? Yes. But really, did they want me to know how to build an employee handbook for them? That's what they wanted, and I knew how to do that. So recognize what you're bringing to the table, recognize your expertise when you're finding yourselves in these moments of imposter syndrome. This is one of my favorites, log positive reinforcement. So I'm going to bet that what a lot of you do has its hard times. So we all have jobs that have moments that are really hard. I am in not an industry, but a profession now that comes with a lot of rejection. And I don't like rejection. I don't know if you all do, but I don't like it at all. So this is, people tell us no a lot. They tell us no, they don't want to hire us. People tell us no, actually, they're not going to do what we suggest. Lots of rejection. So I started doing this with people that reported to me probably 10 years ago. Probably another article that I read, and I don't read that many articles, so you're getting all of them today. I came up with something called a compliment journal, and I started doing that with everybody that reported to me, and they still do it. So let me tell you a quick story, and then we'll start to bring it home. I had a lady that was on my team. It was right when I started doing the compliment journals, and I had my team do it. So this is the idea. When you get a compliment, you log it, and you can log it in whatever way works for you. So you can have a spreadsheet. I'm a spreadsheet girl. You put your compliments in a spreadsheet. You can scrapbook. You can just have a journal. You can have a Word document, whatever works for you, but log them. So this is, a client says something nice, a member of the public says something nice, a coworker, your boss, whatever that is, they compliment you in your work and you log it. So I had my team do that, and off we go. Every team I've had since then, I've had them do this because I think it's really effective. I'm not just trying to find extra things for them to do. I think it's really effective. So full circle moment, that lady that I just told you about, that worked for me 10 years ago, I hired her back. That's what some of us do, right? We have a great employee, we move on, and then we have a job opening and we think about everybody that's worked for us in the past. And so that's what I did. I went back to her and said, will you come work for me? And she said, yes. So about 6 months ago, in one of our weekly team meetings, I was having all of my team members share from their compliment journal. So we do that periodically. And she was newer to the team at that point. on the Zoom, she pulled out her compliment journal that she had kept for the last 10 years, starting with me. She had kept it for 10 years, and she's a scrapbooker. So she had printed and cut out emails and pasted them in. She had little stickers in there, and I started sobbing. I'm surprised that I'm not crying right now, because it was such an emotional moment for me that somebody had latched on to that and recognized the value and done it even when I wasn't telling her to do it, right? It is big. So if you've never done a compliment journal, just try it in whatever way works for you, but it will be there on the dark, hard days when you need to look at it to recognize that you are doing good work. You are valuable. There's no need for you to have imposter syndrome, because there's a place for you, and it's a good place. And then finally, just remembering that confidence doesn't always equal competence. So this is some of that comparison, right? So we've talked about comparison quite a bit today. Just because somebody appears to be confident doesn't necessarily mean they're competent. And so let's not compare ourselves to them. Let's do these other things, these other 3 bullet points above, to be able to recognize, I'll say it one more time, that we have value, that even if we don't know exactly what we're doing, I hope that you are a figure outer. You will figure it out, and you will be valued, and there's no need for imposter syndrome. That is my time. I'm going to turn it back. I'm not sure who I'm turning it back over to, but I'm going to turn it back over to them. Here's my contact information. I would love to hear from each and every one of you. Please reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a text, send me an email. I would love to hear from you. If you got a nugget, I want to hear it. If you're real mad because you wish I would have done this a different way, I want to hear that too. So reach out to me, but I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I'm thankful that you spent an hour of your time with me, and I hope I hear from all of you soon. Jennifer, Angela,
Thank you,
Paige, there's
Kristi. I'm
Jennifer.
sure we have all learned something new today. This week has truly been a pleasure, and I think it will be one for the books. We hope to see you tonight at the Muskogee Golf Course for our Ladies Night Out networking event. This will be your chance to see a demonstration by House of Color Muskogee and enjoy a cocktail or 2 while networking with other attendees. This event starts at 4 tonight. Be sure to follow the fun on the Muskogee Women's Leadership Conference Facebook page for women in Muskogee recognition, information on upcoming networking events, and giveaways. This year's Women Leadership Conference speakers are being recorded, so if you would like to catch up on the speakers or rewatch today's session, go to the link provided in today's Women's Leadership Newsletter email and use password 2023, capital WLCWOW. Though this is the last of our virtual session this week, we are excited to see everyone who is registered for tomorrow's Women's Leadership Luncheon. This event will take place at Indian Capital Technology Center and will start at 11 a.m. Please enjoy the first hour to shop at our local boutiques and pop-up shops and booths and eat lunch, or catch up with other attendees. At noon on Thursday, keynote speaker Lisa Riley with Pinot's Palette will begin her presentation. It's giveaway time. Today's giveaway is a goodie bag from Hattie's House and Vintage Market located at 200 South Main. Melinda Boston, you won the giveaway. Thank you. And also I want to say, Jenny and Kim, thanks for zooming in.